Have an application, you have an agent, and how do you kind of add some of these evals and checks to it? That's all well and good. But you may also be in a situation where you want to test in more of a closed environment. So you might want to try it in more of a experimentation kind of flow. And so that's actually where some of the BLEU and ROUGE and some of these scores can come into play as well too. So the way that we typically do that is we actually will start with a data set of examples. And so I'm actually going to just upload a CSV here and pull in a set of examples. I have a predefined set that I was working off of earlier today, which is that set of questions that we're going to send in. And so you can see in this case, this is just a bunch of potential questions that we could ask of our system. And I'm going to create that data set. So usually the way that we have people working off of this is you have a data set of possible inputs to your application. So again, we're kind of focusing on the routing step here in that particular eval. And so these are inputs into our routing step. And in some cases, you actually may also include things like ground truth data. So we could include the expected output as well too of that information or of that routing step as we go through. In this case, I've just got these inputs here, but you might have another column that's the expected outputs. And so what you can do is you can create experiments from this data or test on this data. And so what I'm going to do from here is I could add a new experiment. I could kind of experiment with this or add evaluators to it. And so we can run an experiment where what we'll do is we'll basically take each row of that data and we will run it through some sort of task, get the output, and then we can evaluate the results of that output. And so in this case, we can see the input here and then the output that we got back. So in this particular case, you see that this person wanted to book a flight from New York to London, and then we came back with that particular output from there. And so you can see all the different pieces here. And in a lot of cases, our travel agent is failing to be able to answer these particular questions. It's not necessarily being super successful here. So we could kind of go line by line here, or what we could do is actually add in our evaluators as well. So I could maybe add in another evaluator here. Same as before, we can create our LLM evaluator. I'm just going to do this as tool calling here. And I actually have to modify a couple of things here. I had to change these values. So you can actually see me doing some live updates here as we go, which is always fun. I think it's called user question is the column that we want to look at there. And then tool call is going to be output. Let's just see real quick if I go to our available tools is one other one I need to grab real quick. Anyone's done live demos, you know how I'm feeling as I go through it. Okay, tool options is just the name of it. And so what I can do is I go over here, I'll define tool options. So again, what we're doing here is very similar to before, where instead of running this template across all of our live runs of our application, we're just going to run it across the results of this particular experiment. And so that's not going to run in the background. It might take a couple of minutes as we go through, but you can kind of see the same idea here is we're taking potential inputs and then we're running those through our application. You see that pop up. In this case, our agent is not really doing a great job with tool calling. It's actually failing in quite a few cases. And so we are maybe wanting to improve some things from there. So we can get a sense of how this is performing, sense of what's going on here. And then from here, we can use some of this data to try to improve our agent and kind of make changes before we take it back to production, back to our tracing side of things. And so just take a quick look at some of the incorrect cases here. You can see we got some explanations. And so in this case, it's really not doing a great job with some of these responses. So what we can do is we could change things in our agent, we could modify our code, we could test things from there, and that would probably be the logical next step that we can do. Again, this is another one of those points where some of the tools that we have available to us here are going to make that process easier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into Prompt Playground, and I'm going to load in, I predefined the prompt that we're using here that has all of our different functions in it already. So you can see this is the whole set of functions that our agent got. So I've pulled these in, and what we're going to do is I'm going to run these across a data set, that same data set of examples with maybe a couple of comparisons side by side. So I'm going to actually add in another prompt variation here. And what we're going to do is we're going to make one very small change, which is we are going to change the function selection to be required. And so what that's going to do is it's going to say, now you have to choose a particular function. You can't actually just give back a nothing response. And so that's one option we could do. We could also change the prompt itself. We could change the function definitions, whatever we wanted to from there. And then I'm going to grab our routing test questions data set here. And we can now run this across all of our examples and we'll see what output we get. And while we're doing that, I think I saw some chat pieces pop up. Oh, a great question here, which is, are you able to measure the carbon footprint of the agentic applications getting executed? So there's not a pre-built function in the platform to be able to measure that. I think what you could do though, is you can define either custom metrics within Arise, or you could measure this yourself, the actual token usage potentially that's coming back. That might be a proxy that you could use actually for kind of the impact of the call itself. And then you could create a sort of calculation that's combining that with the carbon footprint necessarily. That's a great question, though. I feel like that's something I want to explore more in the platform and have a better option for as well, too. And there's a question, I know it's not the focus, but have you seen anyone adopt security use cases as part of some of the eval experiments to look for prompt injection? Yes, we have. So there is a whole concept of something called guardrails, which folks might be familiar with. And guardrails are basically checks that you would run as your application is running live or as your agent is running live, and you would gate certain responses basically on passing those checks. So prompt injection is actually one of the main things that those will check for. And that is a capability that we have in the platform I haven't really talked about, but it's also a whole other field of kind of study that you can go into. The trick here is that the actual checks themselves are really basically just evals. So it's everything that we've already talked about. You can use all those same evaluation techniques, and they kind of just become guardrails when you gate the application from returning back to a user on their success or failure. So you can use code-based, you can use LLMs. You could even technically use human feedback. I think that at that point you're doing like a human in the loop kind of flow, but you could use any of those evaluation techniques, but actually gate the application running on those techniques. So you could say, don't give back a response to the user unless the evals are passed. And so that would be a way that you could actually use these same techniques for kind of guardrails or for predicting against prompt injection.